Wow, what a time, what a day to be a Star Wars fan. Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Smash the like button if you love me. Please have your say. Subscribe if you're new. And welcome to this Star Wars update video. This is insane. We've been complaining for ages now, since the rise of Skywalker, that there's no cinematic announcements or any cinematic excitement for Star Wars, the franchise that literally invented the modern day blockbuster. Well, over in London with the Star Wars celebration, we've had some shocking announcements today. So let's talk about them. Now listen, some fans are going to come at this in a very negative attitude. Some people are going to be very, very positive. We don't know if these films are going to be any good. And listen, Disney have proven that they can't or won't execute great Star Wars. And because Disney and Lucasfilm come from a section of this industry who don't have the motivation to execute great entertainment and great Star Wars. It's about, executing their worldview on the world rather than making great entertainment. So I don't want to focus on the Acolyte or Skeleton Crew or Skeleton Key or whatever it is. I want to talk about these huge movie announcements because they are huge. So here we are. James Mangold, Dawn of the Jedi, takes place during the Old Republic. Let's talk about that one first. Now, this is set, at the beginning. Basically, at the beginning of the formation of the Jedi. This film is going to show us how the Jedi was formed. And as I said, it basically is during the Old Republic. So we're actually going to have a Jedi origin story. Now, James Mangold, who's become a huge Disney man now, and I don't know if that's worrying or if that's exciting. Clearly James is a really good director. Logan is one of the best films I've ever seen, but we don't know how much freedom he's going to have with Star Wars. Now, I think this will be a trilogy. I think it will, but I don't know. So on its own, if I didn't have trust issues with Disney and Lucasfilm, I'd say, you know what? This sounds fucking exciting. This sounds really, really awesome. And yeah, he basically compares it to the Ten Commandments, which is insane. So I want to be excited about this. I do. I really do. But they haven't shown us anything at this moment in time to tell us, do you know what, guys and girls? They really, really want to make great Star Wars. So who knows? Is it a time for false hope? Is it a time for hope? Or is it just more of the same? I must say, on its own, if we strip away the Kathleen Kennedy situation or the Disney situation, this does sound interesting at the very least. But to me, the only person who knows the origins of, the Jedi and the era of the Old Republic is George Lucas. And something tells me that Mangold isn't going to be asking for his advice. Clearly, James will have his own vision, but will this be great Star Wars? Is this what we've been waiting for? I always said, as soon as Disney bought the property and bought Lucasfilm, I said, Star Wars is a really difficult thing to perfect because you can either go with loads of lightsabers and laser guns and excitement and John Williams type music, or you can kind of try and go in a different direction. Look at the films they've made thus far. The Force Awakens, over $2 billion. It was a huge success. It's not the worst film in the world. It was a very safe film. The controversial, underwhelming The Last Jedi that crept to $1 billion. The underwhelming, and not very controversial, just underwhelming, basically the one that ended with Rey calling herself Skywalker. You know, the rise of Skywalker, which also crept to $1 billion. Actually, that tiptoed to $1 billion, didn't it? We had Rogue One, a very successful and popular movie. We also had Solo, which was a flop, which I think that came after The Last Jedi, and I think The Last Jedi can be hugely blamed for that film being a flop. But also, basically, nobody asked for a Solo movie, a Han Solo movie, without Harrison Ford. They killed the character off. They should have left it alone. So the evidence is there in their streaming Star Wars shows. What's happened with The Mandalorian this week, fans are not happy. Now, I can understand why fans are not happy with Mando Season 3. I think some of the reactions are well over the top. Obviously, again, we're going with this, whaman, this woke culture situation where all of a sudden it seems like we're going with the female Mandalorian as the main character and not Pedro Pascal's character, who seems to be sidelined. But this is Disney's worldview. This is what they're going to continue to do. So I don't want to just dismiss the Mangold movie, the Old Republic movie, because I will say it sounds hugely interesting at the very least, and only time will tell. I mean, I think people will judge him a lot more once we've seen Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, that's had its final trailer also released at Star Wars Celebration today. If that film goes down well, then there'll be more confidence over Mangold doing this very ambitious Star Wars project. We will see. Right, then we've got Dave Filoni. This film will cultivate the events of the Mandoverse. Now, this was heavily rumoured yesterday that he was going to direct a film about his Mandoverse. Again, listen, Dave Filoni was trained and cultivated by George Lucas. So his animated stuff is flawless and brilliant. Lately, he hasn't been, this popular thing with the fans that he used to be, especially since Mando Season 3. I don't know. Again, I don't know what to say. I don't know what it's going to be. Look, pretty much he created the animated universe. So he's going to take those characters and bring them into live action, and that's obvious as well. So then you've got Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, who's directing, this is the big one. So she's directing a trilogy starring Rey Skywalker, and the first film is set 15 years after the rise of Skywalker. But get this, not only is Daisy Ridley returning as Rey Skywalker, she will be a Jedi Master. And of course, she wouldn't have earned this title. She never earned being a Jedi in the first place, as we all know. I don't even think you can contest that. I don't think you can even debate that. So I think when I look at this other stuff, so I think like the Filoni one looks kind of semi-exciting. The James Mangold one does sound interesting at the very least, but it's the problematic one. It's the Daisy Ridley trilogy, to me, that could be the problem. And it will be very, very interesting how they go at this. So if there is a woke one, if there is a problematic one, it's certainly the return of Daisy Ridley. Now, to be clear, I like Daisy Ridley. I don't have any problem with her as an artist or an actor. That's not the issue. The issue fans have got isn't with Daisy Ridley, and you shouldn't be attacking her on her social media, by the way, if you're not happy about this. Leave the kid alone. She's an actor. She wants to work. And congratulations to her for returning as the character at the very least. We've got to be ladies and gentlemen here. We've got to act in dignified ways, even if we don't like stuff. So obviously, of course, I'm very skeptical about this trilogy. I don't know this director. Obviously, this is a kind of an inclusive hire as a director. We'll see what happens. And I think this is the Stephen Knight written movie, or is it? Or the set of movies. I think that's where we're going here. So that will be interesting, and this will be a trilogy. So really, this continues the sequel trilogy. This continues the Skywalker saga. Clearly, it's got to move away from the Skywalker saga, but it is the Skywalker saga. It is the continuation of that sequel trilogy. Now, since the rise of Skywalker, there's been a lot of misinformation that they were going to go around the multiverse and reset the timeline so the Last Jedi and the sequel trilogy didn't exist. Of course, that was absolute bollocks, and that was never going to happen, because one thing we know about Disney and all studios, all huge studios, and entertainment today, they never admit their mistakes, and they double down on their mistakes, and they dig themselves even bigger holes. So, here we are, Rey's returning, and I don't know what to think about it. Kind of, a quarter of me thinks, well, at least we're getting Star Wars movies. But that's not the point, because if they're not very good, what's the point? If you're going to damage the IP even further than you already have, what's the point? But that, I think the one that does interest me, as I've already said, is the Old Republic one, how, showing us how the Jedi was formed, it being compared to the Ten Commandments, and James Mangold doing this. Again, I'm not sure if it's a trilogy. I think it's going to be a trilogy. It will be interesting. At the very least, there's a lot of Star Wars cinematic projects now in the planning. I don't want to sit here and shill it all, but I also don't want to sit here and shit on it all. But as a YouTuber, as a big passionate fan of stories, of Star Wars, you know me, I love it all, but I have to call out stuff if I think it's wrong. And as I said earlier, I simply don't trust Disney. But I'm not just going to say it's all going to be shit, but wow. Obviously, Daisy Ridley returning as Rey isn't going to be very popular with a certain section of the fan base. But she does have fans, and there will be people excited. And all her 3 movies made at least $1 billion. Her first one made $2 billion. They were not flops, and you can't say they were flops, right? So, but this will not be a popular decision with a certain group of people. And I can understand the mistrust, as I said earlier, the accusations of calling Star Wars fans racist because they called out one of the characters because of the way she was written. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series was creatively problematic. And to be honest with you, I did not like it. I liked elements of it, but it wasn't consistently good as far as I'm concerned. I grew up watching Star Wars. Star Wars A New Hope was one of the first films I ever saw. So I love Star Wars. I love George's Star Wars. I love Dave Filoni's animated universe. I like elements of Dave Filoni's live action TV universe. But there are problems here. And we know the motivation of Disney. We know what they're all about. We know what they're politically all about. And there's going to be divisive reactions. But ultimately, it doesn't matter what the talk on the internet is. All these people care about is box office and making money and forwarding the IP. If the Daisy Ridley brand new trilogy makes money, they'll be happy. If the brand new Old Republic trilogy makes money, they'll be happy. And if Dave Filoni's movie makes money, he'll get to make more and more movies. If all this stuff succeeds, this will be great for Disney Star Wars, and they can keep on making this stuff. If it fails, they're back to square one. As I've said, we haven't had a Star Wars movie since The Rise of Skywalker in 2019. That's already just under 4 years ago. And, we're going to have to wait a few years until these movies are actually made and available for release. So you're probably looking now, no sooner than 2025, 2026. But if you're excited about this, I'm happy for you. If you're not excited about this, I understand. why you're not excited about this, why you don't trust Kathleen Kennedy and Lucasfilm. But what I will say about all of this, and I've been sniffing this environment for a while, the way Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have been suddenly very complimentary to Kathleen Kennedy. There has been a civil war between Kennedy, Favreau, and Filoni. I think there's two separate factions and there's been a civil war. And I think all these announcements and the way Mandalorian Season 3 has gone, we can say that Kathleen Kennedy has won the civil war and she will continue as president, as Lucasfilm. And people are not going to like hearing this, but I think these are the facts. Kathleen Kennedy won the war. Her record's interesting. These streaming shows aren't the best, haven't done the best in terms of numbers. When you look at the amount of people unsubscribing from Disney Plus, Disney Star Wars on Disney Plus hasn't really helped to keep people on the platform, right? Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people unsubscribing. You look at the movies, they've been somewhat controversial, but the sequel trilogy made what? Altogether about $4 billion altogether. That's not bad, but they weren't the greatest of movies, but they did make money. So then you've got obviously Solo that failed, blah-de-blah-de-blah, and Rogue One did well. So it's all very inconsistent, but they do need the IP to make cinematic movies. They do. So in the very least, announcing all these movies is exciting. But if they're shit movies and the fans hate them and they don't make any money, if they continue to double down on their politics and their so-called inclusion and representation quotas, there's going to be a problem. There's nothing wrong with inclusion and representation, but you've got to make great entertainment and great Star Wars at the same time. If they deliver great entertainment and great Star Wars, no one's going to complain about the inclusion and representation. But when you're representing minority directors, they've got to direct great movies. They've got to be capable of making a great Star Wars movie. So if this brand new director doing this, brand new Rey Skywalker movie, continuing on from the Rise of Skywalker, is a great director, that's great. If Stephen Knight writes a great movie, that's great. We will have to wait and see. So I'm not going to dismiss this shit. I mean, it's a shocking day at Star Wars Celebration. There's no question about it. I'm shocked about all these announcements. I mean, I thought we'd get the Dave Filoni. I mean, I've been hearing things about the Dave Filoni stuff. So yes, I am a huge Star Wars fan, and there's a portion of me that wants to have a little bit of hope and a little bit of positivity because it's interesting. And there's no question, each one of these movies has to make up just over $2 billion in the global worldwide box office. No question. You look at Avatar, The Way of Water. That film took, 13 years, 12 years to release. Not even Jim Cameron knew if it would make any money. It did. It made over $2 billion, right? So if that film that took so long to make made that money, each Star Wars film has to be making that kind of money, or it will be looked at by the studio, both studios, Lucasfilm and Disney, as failures. So it's very, very interesting to be a Star Wars fan, and there's never a dull moment. As I say, there's an element of me who wants to just say, oh my God, but I want to give it all a chance. Of course I do. I don't just want to dismiss it. But as I said earlier, Disney have, and Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy have done nothing to give us any confidence in their ability and willingness to make great Star Wars. Basically, these people are on probation. Let's see if they pass this probationary period. This has been Movies TV Man. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wife. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. Smash the like button if you love me. Subscribe if you're new. Please have your say. And I will see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.